right over. I realize this has been very trying, but Mrs. Allison, won't you at least tell me...
Lieutenant? Oh, Helen.
I have. Welcome aboard.
Hello, Herbert. Good of you to come so quickly.
What's this all about?
The building security officer heard a gunshot, ran in here, found Mrs. Allison with a murdered man, Harry Bourne, a private detective.
You needn't ask, Herbert. I didn't kill him.
Then why don't you tell me what you were doing here?
Because, forgive me, Lieutenant, my reasons are none of your business.
Helen, a man has been murdered.
Exactly. Herbert, you know I'm not a vindictive person. But Mr. Bourne was an evil, vicious man. Whoever killed him did society and me a great favor.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Allison. You leave me no choice except to hold you in custody.
Lieutenant, why don't you let me talk to her alone?
That won't be necessary. I can only tell you what I told the lieutenant. I was found, as he says, at the scene of the crime. And I must admit, in all honesty, I hated Harry Bourne.
Oh, Lieutenant.
Yeah. Mrs. Allison, did Harry Bourne ever work for you?
Yes. He collected the evidence necessary for my divorce. Mr. Maris knows all about that.
Did he ever try to blackmail you in any way?
Lieutenant, I will not discuss that man any further.
I'm sorry, Heather. I'm going to have to hold her. Joe.
Herbert, will you tell Alice? I'd rather she heard about it from a friend.
Of course. And I'll be down to see you as soon as I can.
How about a drink?
We want to talk to you about Harry Bourne.
That punk? Surprised me if he didn't wind up with a bullet in his head one of these days.
He just did.
So right away you come to see Jake Neal, huh?
What was your beef with him?
You got the wrong guy, Lieutenant. We was friends.
Thought he was a punk.
My friends are punks. Now, Harry, he had the bad habit of borrowing money from people, you know? That's no way to build up a good credit rating.
Was Bourne blackmailing you?
You boys just aren't listening.
Well, listening. Where were you at noon today?
Me? Right here. Ask the kid, she'll tell you.
I'll bet she will.
Well, I'm sorry, Lieutenant. I never heard the name.
We have your telephone message to him, Mr. Calder.
Really, Mr. Maris,
Now, we have no desire to pry into your private life, but this has to do with murder.
Murder? And of course, gentlemen, I will cooperate. But I must ask that what I say be held in strict confidence.
Whatever you say will be forgotten as soon as we leave. Yeah, unless it concerns this case.
It's not easy for me. See, I'm married to a woman who is somewhat younger than I am. And lately I felt that she'd become a trifle restless. To be honest, I suspect there might be someone else. Oh, I hired Mr. Bourne to investigate. There was no thought of divorce because I love my wife. But banks are stuffy institutions, and you can see why I wouldn't like to have my marital difficulties bruited about.
Oh, we're sorry about this. We appreciate you telling us, but you can be sure it'll go no further.
I'm sure.
Well, thank you, Mr. Calder, and good luck.
Thank you.
On.
Police.
What's Harry done now?
Well, what makes you think it's about him?
You're not selling tickets to a policeman's ball. It's about Harry.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Bourne. But he's dead.
Fine.
Mrs. Bourne, your husband was murdered.
When you say husband, mister, use the word lightly. I was married to him, period.
Did he ever mention any of his clients to you?
You kidding. Haven't talked to him in weeks. When I did, it wasn't about business.
But you telephoned him today, Mrs. Bourne. Why?
He promised to take our oldest boy, Joey, to the zoo. Joey was counting on it. Harry was very big on promises, so I just wanted to see if he was going to keep this one.
Where were you about noon today?
Right here, washing diapers.
Were there any witnesses?
Anytime you can get an audience to watch me washing diapers, I'll be happy to charge admission and let you count the ticket stubs. I can use the money.
I know this is none of my business, Mrs. Bourne, but what would you do now? I mean, did your husband leave you any insurance?
I don't know. He always kept his personal papers in the office safe.
Well, we went through his office, Mrs. Bourne. We didn't find any safe.
Maybe he was lying about that, too, like he did about everything else. It'd be just like him. All I know is what he told me.
Mrs. Bourne, do you have a phone?
Yeah,
May I use it?
sure. Come on, I'll show you where it is.
The more you know about Mr. Bourne, the more you find love. Where are you going, back to the office?
Yeah, I want to find out about that safe. But first, I think I'll talk to Calder again.
What for?
Well, I got a hunch that Bourne's big income was blackmail. You know, Jake Neal doesn't lend money to just anybody who asks for it, and Mrs. Allison pulled up too quick when I asked her about it. Could be he was blackmailing Calder.
Well, drop me off at the cab stand, will you? I should have talked to Mrs. Allison's daughter before this. I don't want her getting the news from some happy gossip monger.
Okay, Herb.
Say, Lieutenant. Have you any idea who did it? I thought I might get in touch with their lawyers. I'm sure I could sway the jury.
We're holding a woman, Helen Allison, one of your husband's clients. Mr. Maris is her attorney.
What do you know? So Mrs. Allison was one of his clients, huh? Life is just one big bowl of irony.
You know Mrs. Allison?
You might say that. She rang my doorbell a couple of weeks ago. I took one look at the furs, the jewelry, the limousine, and all the jazz, and I said, well, charity at last.
What you want?
She wanted to talk to me as a mother. It seems we had a mutual problem. Harry was stalking her little fawn. He wanted to marry her.
Alice?
That's right. She wanted me to influence Harry. I'm afraid I dashed all her hopes.
Did you make any threats?
She didn't have to. Now that I think of it, I'm surprised she didn't kill him sooner.
Thank you, Mrs. Bourne.
Oh, Mr. Matt.
Well, not so well. At least from my client. It was a girl with a...
John, you don't know her the way I do. Helen Allison couldn't possibly kill anybody.
Look, Herb, I'm only a policeman. All I do is collect evidence. The district attorney takes it from there, and you know as well as I do, this is exactly the kind of evidence he's looking for.
What did Calder have to say?
Herb, that's a funny thing. What does a somewhat younger woman mean to you?
Try that again.
Well, you remember Harvey Calder saying he was married to a somewhat younger woman that he thought was playing around?
So?
Calder wasn't home, but I talked with Mrs. Calder. You know, she's beyond the point of being embarrassed at revealing her age. You know, she admits to 55 years old, 3 years younger than her husband.
3 years. That is somewhat less than somewhat younger.
You see what I mean? And another thing, I couldn't quite picture her playing around.
Because she's 55. I think Miss Wilby was right. You're a Boy Scout at heart.
Maybe. It's kind of hard to believe. She entered the door in a wheelchair.
Let's see if we can find that safe.
They cooped up in this morgue.
Not too long. Find anything exciting?
Not a thing. Looks like straight divorce stuff.
Well, what'd you expect to find?
I'll let you know as soon as you open the safe.
What safe?
Why do you have to do everything the hard way?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Miss Baudret, I'll find that safe if I have to bring a crew in here and tear this office apart piece by piece. Do you listen to me? Now, if you cooperate, you're going to make things easier on everybody. Especially you.
Look, I don't know what Harry was doing. You want cooperation? All right, I'll cooperate. But I don't want to get mixed up in anything else.
You know, the more you talk, the more anxious I am to see what's in that safe. Let's find it, huh?
It's in the inner office.
All right. After you.
Now remember, I'm not mixed up in any of this.
Miss Baudry, you certainly do try a man's patience. Open it. Jake Neal.
You were right about the blackmail.
Helen Allison.
I told you about that.
Two pretty good payments there, Hud.
Let's go.
Need that,
Get your hands behind your back.
If ever a man deserved to be killed, it was Harry Bourne.
Your story was a lie, wasn't it?
Not quite. I hired him to investigate a girl, a friend of mine. I suspected there might be someone else in her life. There was. I was content to let it go, but Bourne wouldn't have it that way.
He was blackmailing you, wasn't he?
He threatened to take his information to my wife. And Mrs. Calder had strong ideas about morality. If she had known, she would have left me.
And the scandal would have ruined you at the bank, so Bourne had to go.
Now it's your turn.